Mahtab Moradi, Director of Behavioral Health at Formula Med. Mahtab has a background in counseling psychology with over 22 years of experience. Today we are going to talk on behavioral health and the impact it has in the workplace. We are aware that workplace productivity is significantly impacted by behavioral, mental, and emotional issues. Mahtab will share her expertise from being a marriage counselor to how it has brought a unique mindset to applying relationships to workplace environments. Good morning, Mahtab. How are you?
Good morning. I wish I had your coffee. So much enthusiasm. I'm like, in my business, I have to be the voice of calm, and you guys get to be like, it's Monday morning. No, I'm so happy to be here. And you're right. It's been such a fun experience reinventing my career over the years and, entering the field of like corporate world.
Yeah.
But it seems like the last few years with COVID and how it impacted the work environment, my expertise in crisis management and, helping people regroup, especially in the leadership realm, has been very useful. And I've been able to draw a lot of parallelism from, like the systems theory, which is like, when you train, there's several ways you could go with psychology. There's the route of social work, the LPC route, and then the marriage and family. And as I've been, becoming more and more into the entrepreneur realm, I'm noticing that we operate very similarly. Like as you understand family systems, you can understand companies and where they get stuck and all these relationship dynamics that play out. Right. And how much really we make decisions based on emotions and how we stay with decisions that we make based on emotions. So learning how to navigate and helping leaders and companies navigate through that has been really fun for me, like a puzzle.
So we want to know a little bit about you. It's your first time here on Chai Time, and we'd like to know, want you to share your journey with us, get to know more on a personal level, and to our listeners as well. So how did you start? How did this career path start for you? And, all from the beginning.
Oh my God. You guys are trying to... How much time do you have? I want to say, I think, when people always talk about, it's your calling. You never even like burn out from it. And I think as a child, we were actually talking about, I was born in Tehran, and we escaped the 8-year war of Iran and Iraq back in the 80s. And at the time I was 7. And we landed, our first stop was Istanbul. And a lot of Iranians were kind of waiting for visas to just get to safety and not be directly impacted by the war. So even as a kid, I would notice people who were struggling, like in the immigration, the chaos. And I have this, I don't know if you want to call it a gift, because sometimes it works against me, but when I'm in a space, I pick up like who's struggling. Yeah. And then my first tendency is like, well, how can I help this person get out of this emotional pain? And fast forward, by the time we came to the States, and I think being an immigrant always shapes you anyway. You can never take those earlier years of your life and pretend like it never happened. So when I went to UT, I was just back and forth between anthropology, psychology, and I ended up studying developmental psychology because I'm like, I'm kind of that weird kid that I relate to like my grandparents' friends, and then I look at people and I'm like, oh, I could be doing that so different. Or if I see, someone who needs to have a talk, I kind of take it upon myself to go like have these uncomfortable conversations. And of course, it's yielded me many genuine friends and cost me plenty more.
Correct.
But I'm like, this is a calling for me. So I actually became, my favorite professor at UT was Dr. Rebecca Bigler. And one day I saw her stressed out in the middle of a lecture. And she was actually the first female tenure professor at UT. And so she had the pressure of having kids and juggling a career. 500 people in her class. I had waited 2 semesters to get into her class. And I'm like, Dr. Bigler, why are you struggling today? And she's like, well, I have this really important thing with all the big shots, and I don't have anyone to watch my kid. And I'm like, well, where do you live? This is my last class. Yeah. And I became her nanny. And, I always say, you are the product of the 5 people
Yes.
your experiences. And I adored this woman so much, like I kind of became her. And she wrote a letter for me. I got into a great graduate program. And so I always had that developmental psychology, like how did it all start? Why do we behave certain ways? Why does one person, have this temperament? Or how can, I'm one of 5 kids, how can we be 5 kids and so different? These were all like fascinating questions for me. So she actually introduced me to one of her friends, and I became a research assistant. I did not like not being in touch with people, and just data collection. And so I'm like, okay, PhD is not for me. Yeah. I love people too much, and I think I've had so much experience, like living in different countries, that hopefully I'll have a lot more fun dealing with people directly. So that's how I chose the counseling route. Okay. But I specifically chose marriage and family because I felt like culturally it spoke to me more. Okay. And it was out of the 3 kind of paths in counseling, marriage and family, really I have a true appreciation for the big picture, the systems angle. It's not so, I guess, looking for a diagnosis rather than seeing people struggling and trying to navigate life. And that was more fitting for me because I love the problem-solving aspect. I love being in complicated situations and growing with the process. Yes. And then offering solutions. So I did that for 16 years. Okay. And so my training in like crisis management is as intense as a kid on top of a roof with a self-made weapon, homicidal, suicidal. Wow. I was in an inpatient hospital setting, and my unit was like schizophrenic, high acuity. Oh, wow. And so the world of business is fantastic. It's like the level of acuity and the psychiatric need is so different. So when I had my private practice, I started working with a lot of people who own their own business, mm-hmm. and kind of became really good friends with some of them, and they started seeing me in a different light because people. When they run a company, like we have a client who has 14,000 employees, there's a certain level of stress that goes with that. But what I could bring to them is, okay, your business is falling apart, and sometimes your business and your marriage are falling apart at the same time. Well, I kind of have that unique expertise. Correct. Where I can help in both spaces. And it's amazing when you can help alleviate emotional pain. That's where your mind clears up and you can do the best work. I truly believe in that. I practice it myself. I've gone through my share of life, and it's helped me perform better. So that was my inspiration to leave the insurance game and, labeling people like what's wrong with you, the disease model, into a more progressive, like, let's not wait till there's a fire. Let's not ever let one happen. Or what my clients they love. I always say, how about we create chaos instead of being victim of chaos. I think it's a very different angle on problems.
That's interesting.
Yeah, right?
Creating chaos.
And that just speaks to there's a rebellious side of me where I'm like, I'm going to just mess with the status quo to see what I can get different,
Right.
And we always hear the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. And that really strikes a chord with me, because I think if you can shift your mindset, you can actually be your best version in really hard times. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people ask you, like, well, how did you get here? How did you make your success story? And sometimes you make it because you have no other option. Mm-hmm. You can either show up and grow with a new experience, or like we call them, the growing pains. Yes. Or some people cave in. So what's the difference between the person that takes any disadvantage in life and rises above that to the person that caves in, right, and then keeps this ongoing narrative of I'm such a victim and this experience made me. So I love that, and I love playing with that formula, but it helps me to know developmental psychology, Piaget. How do we first start thinking about how do we sort our thoughts? How do we organize cognitively? And then as a business person, how do you function best in your in the executive functions, in the work that you're doing? And most of the times it's that the emotional barriers that you are not like facing, and you show up in places in your life. And I last week it was interesting. I was doing a consult for this company, and the issue of invisibility for women. Women have gotten so educated, and we got a seat at the table, but what is the point of a seat at the table when no one wants to listen to your ideas? Mm-hmm. So how do you create leverage? How do you make your ideas a selling point, and not become disposable, and not fall into these patterns of insecurity and doubt, and what's going on in the meta analysis, like the meta communication that is never spoken, but we all know. When we enter a company, you can read the culture of that space. You can tell, like, okay, who takes the best chair at the conference table,
Oh, the best parking spot.
Yeah, or the office with the view. And these are all things we study, right, in family systems theory. Like how hierarchy established, how is power distributed in relationships. And so it's been, I can't say how much fun I've had, because the seriousness of it's like I paid my dues for many, many years, and now I get to like recreate and reinvent what I know, and then kind of, put my own personality on it. Right. And the richness of the culture that I've been so lucky to experience as an immigrant, as someone who's, lived in different countries. Yeah. So.
Yeah, as a woman, like, mm-hmm, you've gone through all of that, so for all women, for all of us, how hard it is. Even now in this day and age, it's not easy. And mm-hmm, like you said, like, sometimes you get that seat on the table, but then no one's listening to you. So how do we still have to work extra hard, mm-hmm, for that. We still have to get people to take us seriously, mm-hmm, many times, right? So mm-hmm, it's still work in progress.
Yes. And this was the best stories I have are probably from my New York clients. Uh-huh. And one stands out to me because she and I have been working for almost 3 years. And she always, from the get-go, hired me as a coach. And she had graduated from an Ivy League school, very educated, great position with, a really great company in New York, and they're publicly traded and blah, blah, blah. Well, she got a seat at the table. And one day she called me and she's like, I'm having a panic attack because I don't even know if they're going to keep letting me have this job. And I'm like, why would you have a panic attack? I mean, you're pretty set up, with an MBA, with the pedigree that you've got going on. And it was just her own barriers within herself. She had found out there was a guy who just got hired on who was almost making $65K more than she was. Ooh. And she had already been there for 4 years, which is insane. Yeah. And she was afraid, before her review, she was afraid to even bring it up. Yeah. That she was going to get fired. So basically functioning from a place of fear versus confidence. Correct. Because she had more than earned her position there. So then we would start, we call these strategy decks. Before we would role play. And this is a person I have not met in she's in New York and I'm here. And we would role play how you would word what you want, with the CFO or the CEO of a company, and already, come across as confident and not doubt, because we often radiate how we're really feeling. Mm-hmm. Even though we try to mask it, you cannot hide your own energy, your own vibe. Yes, so that became a very good starting point for her. Now, 3 years into it, she's making almost triple what she started off. She hired me to do her premarital counseling too. She's like, now I need you to help me find a man. Oh. So we did that. And I'm, she's gonna call me let's have the uncomfortable talk before a baby. And so I kind of become almost part of the family after a while. Now I've treated the next generation. Because the other month someone called me. I'm like, wait, I recognize that last name. And I had to think. And he goes, yeah, you helped save my parents' marriage when I was a teenager. And now I need your help to, I want to find the one, right. But I'm just not coming off very confident. And I'm like, oh my God, people are pulling me back to my old chapter. So I leave a little bit of room for referrals, because I'm like, I don't think you can ever take the marriage counselor out of me.
That's amazing. What you do is so unique, right? I mean, I have never heard of helping with business. First of all, I didn't know there was actually help available psychologically for, helping take care of your business and your marriage. If someone can do it together, you don't have to explain twice, They understand you
it's
so
a one-stop
shop. So that's just amazing.
Well, traditionally that space has been for IO psychology, okay. Organizational psychology. Okay. So these guys are very data-driven, right? Yeah. Well, when COVID happened, forget data, everybody had their first panic attack, yeah. I think.
Yes, because it was an unknown.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true.
So then that kind of opened the door a little bit for me, even though I had my own executives that I worked one-on-one. Then I get a call hey, somebody needs, they're going to shut the whole factory down because people are too stressed out to come to work because they think they're going to get COVID and it's going to kill them. And then I've got the guy on top having a nervous breakdown. And so I'm like, oh, this is a good place for me to play on both skill sets. Because, that is one thing I don't mess with. I'm like, a little fear is very good for us. Yes. but you got to know what to do with that,
Channel it,
right?
yeah.
What people, I think, even stress, there's good stress and bad stress. There's eustress and then the bad stress. How we navigate, both take mental space.
Yeah.
Both can be taxing on us, but how do you navigate is the key.
Right.
And you can read 25 self-help books. It's just not the same. When I think by the time we sit for an exam, we've had like 3,000 hours of clinical training, and we ourselves, the program, I graduated from U of H, so I'm definitely from Houston in that sense. And they teach you how to navigate your own emotions so that when you're entering into a space to help other people, your process and their process don't create friction. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people got very excited because many people were home, mm-hmm. and they would get certifications on this or that, and it's different the way I think I lean on my clinical insight to help someone out of a problem is different. I'm not just a cheerleader, you can do this, because a lot of life coaching training and motivational training, they just say, just pick people up emotionally. Well, if you've got a clinical background, you understand sometimes it's dangerous to push people into a process that you're not equipped to handle, to get them out of. And I've actually had to clean up some messes for some folks that I know that play in that realm. I'm like, be careful to stay in your lane, because you poke at people's emotions and things can come out, and then you wouldn't know what to do with that. Right. So I've got my list of friends I refer to. I've got some really great folks that are still clinicians.
Yeah.
So, they get a lot of referrals from me.
But that's good.
Yeah, it's like, there you go.
Wow, you have a plate full. You're like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of...
I love the stories because, these are real life stories, and people that you meet during, at your workplace or, your profession, what you're doing. So that's amazing. And I think the difference that you're making in people's lives, they come with a different, like when they approach you and they have a problem.
A big one.
A big one, exactly. So, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go on a short break, and when we get back, we'll continue our conversation. This is Chai Time on 99.5 FM. Welcome back to Chai Time on 99.5 FM. We are in conversation with Mahtab. We're having such a great time here.
Sorry, I'm having
off-the-cuff conversation. No, we're loving it.
Thank you.
So the question I was asking you, because you handle such big clients, then do you have a place of fear? Like, where do you handle all these emotions and,
Yeah, so, this is where I think a clinical background helps, because, for the entirety of your training, you are taught how to manage, and those boundaries with yourself.
Yes.
So where you reach that threshold. Of course, some of, we call it grounding techniques, right? It's used in anxiety, but it could also be applied to self-management. You don't want to get into a numbers game. When you have a set of clients and 2 or 3 are going to be pretty demanding, you don't want to take on another 2 new clients. So some of it is the boundaries you set for yourself of, okay, how could I balance this and still have a presence for my family, and manage my own emotions. Sometimes I gotta make an appointment for myself. When you guys were setting up, my daughter sent me a text. She's like, Mom, are you free after 4:30? Sometimes she'll be, she's a high school student. She'll say, can I get a 30-minute here? And so it's, you integrate this whole culture of kind of mindset and health, being able to like create transparency and being really authentic,
Right.
knowing your own limit, you know, like being able to tell your own kid, like, sweetie, I'm kind of not present at the moment because I've got like 50 things. Can we talk like in an hour?
Yeah.
Setting those boundaries and not getting so greedy. I see some, you know, therapists or coaches that just book and they don't even remember like their clients' kids' names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at that point, it's kind of like, I don't know, you become better and better at setting those boundaries with yourself
Yeah.
when you have the intention to help, but also know that limit of, ooh, I can't be helpful. So this is a funny story. Well, it's not so funny, but, you know, I make everything kind of like, okay. I actually did not do marital counseling for 3 years right after my divorce
Oh wow.
because it did not feel like an authentic space for me.
Mm.
And so for those years, I actually went to work with a friend of mine who's a family doctor, and I said, I don't want any, you know, marital referrals, just depression and anxiety and sleep disorder. So I just kind of picked that and went with it and helping kids. And that was also my transition into doing a lot of, you know, I almost have like a side hustle with philanthropy and nonprofit, because that is, research does show that altruism is like taking, you know, Zoloft. So I'm like, ooh, I'm going to put that research to work. This is right about the time of my life where I need that. So, you know, I speaking to your question, that's one of the spaces where I'm like, you know, this isn't for me.
Right.
And then just organically it happened that as I was helping myself and applying my own approach to my own life, more and more women started noticing like how the theory could work. Mm-hmm. And so I became, I had kind of another niche market, and that's where I started working with career women who dealt with not being visible, getting a seat at the table but not being listened to. These are very similar in marriage, by the way. I got the guy, now he won't listen to me. Yay! So I think it just organically became its own thing.
Right.
And then I said, you know, I'm not the most rigid person when it comes to spirituality, but I do believe that if you set a good intention, everything works out.
Yes.
And people will
Absolutely.
get to know you. You will get anywhere you want, you know, with just good intentions.
Yes.
And putting people first. You know, we take an oath. You always put the client's interest first. That oath never left me. And I think in the business world, people have gained an appreciation for the way I operate.
Yeah.
You know, I once had a session with a man who literally like had to file Chapter 11. He lost his company, $200 million. He's like, everyone I love will leave me because they're so used to living this life. And I walked out of our meeting, and he's like, why aren't you collecting? Or, you know, like I did not collect for I think maybe 4 months. I said, I don't want you to walk around this planet thinking everyone wants you for your money.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
whenever you ramp up and your business is thriving again, you know how to get a hold of me.
Oh, that's
You know?
so sweet.
So, and I don't think people bring that level of compassion anymore. And so, speaking of compassion, I've been on this kick because I feel like, you know, it's kind of like the altruism thing. we're suffering so greatly because we're not teaching EQ. You know, all we're teaching is take, and take more pictures of yourself, and, you know, like step on this person to rise above. And these are just all wrong, and we will all pay the price as humanity. So that was my inspiration when Mariam contacted me about the Fort Bend Compassion Project. I'm like, you know, let's help shape leaders early on. Let's, again, not wait for the fire.
Correct.
Like, let's not be reactive. Let's be proactive.
And you're talking about the adults, and when you say compassion, I have little kids. Like, I have a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old. So I'm like, maybe she should do a class for them, because me and Sasha, our other co-host, same age, around the same, we can see the kids. They're all about how to get more. You know, and once they have whatever they want, it's that little toy, and then what's next? So we played with that for 5 minutes, and let's see now what else we can buy, because Amazon is on their fingertips, right? So it's that, like you're talking about, the compassion, that sense of fulfillment. Like, where does that come from? How do we instill it in our children? One would be we completely ban it, but I feel like when you stop, when you say no, they wanted more. You know, so it's,
Well, this is one of the reasons I wanted to leave. You know, when you're doing counseling, you're in a little room with one conversation. It's very hard to scale.
Right.
So I said, okay, we live in a capitalist country.
Yes, absolutely.
Where everybody is just all about those numbers and the cars and the big homes. And I said, okay, well, let's start with the top then. Who are the guys who are running the show? And over the course of the years that I've helped people, I think I finally got to a place where I could get that conversation with these leaders. And so it makes me so excited because 2 decades ago, when I was a 22-year-old intern at UTMB, and I wanted to teach my first class, and all the doctors looked at me like I was the coffee girl. I said, I am going to write a letter for you. This is your behavioral psych rotation. And I'd be happy to get you a cup of coffee, too. Because that's how my, grandmother raised me. Like, if people need tea and coffee, like, hook them up. I'm like, I don't have an ego here. It seems like you need the work. And then, so that same doctor, he's so cute. He always saved me a seat at the front. They have this M&M, like when patients die at the hospital, they try to do root cause analysis. And of course, 20 years ago, behavioral health, like sitting next to MDs, it was a joke, right? You're the soft science, And so it's been a process to get to this point where now that same doctor, again, they're bragging that they've got me on speed dial, right? So it's all mindset, you know? How do you, if you're going to walk into that room, if I was going to be an insecure 22-year-old and not take that event and add humor to it, I would never get to that place.
Right.
And I had the most amazing supervisor. She's now retired, Dr. Dorothy Trevino. She was fantastic. And I did my 3,000 hours with her, and like some of the best. Like, we don't end up in places randomly.
Correct.
It's who shapes us. And then if those people, if we admire them, we're going to be more likely to become them.
Right.
Yes.
And I truly believe that. And so now with Formula Med, I've finally come to a place where I can go to a meeting and I have like tons of questions and I don't feel like the smartest girl in the room. And I love that because I'm still learning, I think the growth mindset is maybe our only savior these days, to be flexible, to be open to growth. We live in such a diverse, complex world And that spills over to relationships, right?
Yes.
We can't be sitting in a room and judging each other and always just sticking to our own values and beliefs.
Yeah.
If anything, a sign of an intelligent person is one that could step out of their own realm and play in a different sandbox, so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
And so I feel that now that I'm facing the second half of my life, this last stretch, I am finally like, I don't have any really something to prove. I already graduated with honors, president of my class. I check,
Yeah.
And now I get to play and just collect stories and help people shape their happiness, but in a very kind and gentle way. I want my legacy to be like the nice girl wins.
No.
Like anything I didn't like growing up, obviously you guys know in the Middle East, like I count as 1/3 of a human being in the law in some countries, and so for me to be here and just the conversations I get to have, the cool people I get to meet, and how I can shape decisions and mindsets, it's awesome. I mean,
that's great.
Yeah. I get to be with you guys.
It was meant to happen for us to get connected.
Yes.
There's always, there's always that, what do you call it, the purpose, like this, we just meet. I mean, who thought we'd meet at an event, we get talking, and I'm like, hey, would you like to come on Chai Time? And
I did a class on hugging,
Yeah.
That was a fun one too.
Yeah.
No, but you sound like Reese Witherspoon in like Legally Blonde, because she was that happy, perky, person changing. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, like her intention was always to be happy and helpful, right? And like from the conversation we have, that seems like what you want to do is make a change in the world with being your clients being happy, and you're so like perky about it, and I love that.
I do. When people say, do you get burned out? I'm like, this is too much fun. The other obsession I have is jigsaw puzzles. So my kids, and especially my daughter, finished her first 1,000 piece when she was 3.
Oh, wow.
And I look at life and problems like a puzzle. I'll go into a space with a new company, and I'm like, okay, you know how you do the edges? Like some people like to do the edges first.
Yeah.
So you hang back and you try to get a feel for hierarchy and structure, just like a puzzle. Like, how much room do I have to work with on this table without my pieces falling off, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, who seems to be the big shot around here? Of course, I don't say any of this out loud.
No, of course, yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, this nosy side of me. And I'll just make notes. I'll go to a meeting and, I'll put what we talked about, but I will observe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this person totally lit up when we were talking about such and such. And then I start doing these emotional, in marriage counseling, you start mapping out the characters in the story, the emotional mapping. And because then you need to go and be a disruptor. So if in a family there's chaos, obviously, they hired you to do something different, right? So you have to interrupt the status quo, which I call the creative chaos, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a bad thing. In that context, chaos is very lovely. But it's not just you can go start creating chaos. You have to win over 2 people, right? So in a marriage counseling situation, you got to get the guy and the girl liking you and respecting you pretty much evenly.
Yeah.
And in a company, you got to get the big guy up that makes the decision, writes the checks to respect you. And you got to get the lowest paying employee who is always stressing out whether they're getting fired or I'm not getting paid enough, and you got to win both of their hearts over. And then the creative chaos starts happening. And you're like, I wonder what would happen if I have this conversation with the guy at the top, and so that he can see the struggle of the person that's, down below. And so in that sense, you almost function as an interpreter. You interpret emotions for people. And that was a very cool thing for me. I told you I landed in Istanbul in the Taksim Square, where all the shady people are, and you have to watch your pockets. And I became an interpreter because I'm like, to survive this thing, I need to learn some Turkish.
And you were only 7.
Yeah, and I ended up going to a Turkish school for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so, again, life shapes you. We are a product of our experiences and the people we meet. So then I integrate all of that into the work that I do. And I love it. I think you're right. It brings out the real in people, and it kind of evens the playing field. And, it's kind of a selfish thing. Who doesn't want to be the helper,
Yeah.
I love when that jigsaw puzzle is finished.
Yes.
And I love building things and then gifting. I'm like, okay, we're done. And then I get a call. My daughter's getting married. Can you see if this is the right guy? I'm like,
wow.
I don't keep people on my caseload very long because my intention is to help them and send them on their way. It's not that you're going to be dependent on me for I don't want to be a crutch. Plus, that's really bad for business. That means I am so bad that people are on my case. I once had this couple. This was when me and Dr. Brown we were running a clinic together in League City, and this couple walked in. It's like, have you had marriage counseling before? Yeah, for like 8 years. And that was my reaction. I said, what? Which graduate school did they go to? Because I hope it's not the one I graduated from. I'm going to write a letter to somebody. I'm like, that is so unethical. To keep a couple, like people don't even stay married that long. So, and that brings me, I think you have to give problems the attention they deserve.
Correct.
Whenever I meet with executives or people I'm trying to help, I'm like, let's remember, you are doing way more things right than wrong, or you would have needed me at birth. So having that sense of empowerment, when we function from a place of confidence and in a relaxed state, when our brain is not in fight or flight, so versus when we are. So when you're anxious, you practically lose 80% of your executive function because you're too busy. You're in the primal brain. You're fight or flight. So part of the reason I goof around a lot because it helps people relax. Yeah. And if I'm trying to teach a concept, and if I'm trying to shape and reconstruct a negative mindset, shifting towards growth mindset, I need that brain to be relaxed, because the likely that person will retain the information is much higher if I get them to relax.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, because then you're really actually thinking, in the right channel,
and you're retaining.
Way. Yeah, exactly. But when you're upset, nothing makes sense.
Yeah. That's why we do, with trauma and kids, they do play therapy. Yeah.
Right.
You're playing in sandboxes, you're doing you do art, you try to get the kid to just relax.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's why, like, then that's when, I mean, I've seen shows where they give kids toys and they start playing with them,
Yeah,
and
and
then
they
slowly
start-
they come out of you know, whatever's bothering them, or they start talking about it. Yeah, you're so right. You're so smart.
Oh God, it's the water. No, I'm just kidding.
Smart one.
I'm like, don't put more expectations. You know, I just want to be one of the people at the table, not the smartest one.
So Mahtab, explain to us what is behavioral health. We have been talking a lot about it. So what is a definition of it, basically?
So, you know, in any context, I think the working definition could be different.
Okay.
You know, behavioral health has got like stages, right? You could be in my world now is more with like growth mindset and like personal development. In the more acute part of behavioral health, you actually deal with more crisis, more depression, anxiety, where your psychological well-being is somehow preventing you from functioning as your full person, or what I call the baseline.
Okay.
So like if your baseline is, I don't know, I get up at 6 a.m., I go for a workout, I show up to work consistently, I love to go meet with friends 4 times a month, you know, like to cook, and then suddenly some event in your life happens, and you don't want to be around people, you know, you stop working out, your diet changes, your sleep pattern changes. You know, in mental health, sleep is the big gatekeeper. And so that's kind of on the more acute side. Okay. Then in another phase, you could be shaping or reshaping behavior, such as a lot of the work that's being done with like the youth. So you've got ADD, and we need to build you up in your skill sets and give you coping skills before you reach adulthood. So behavioral health could be that support system in that setting. Okay. So I've kind of played in all these realms, and given the right space and the match is perfect. I think part of it is, as a person, we need to educate ourselves. Okay, am I a good match for more like a growth mindset, or do I need like to get some things in order before I could do goal setting? And that's different for everybody. Okay. And, you know, you have EAP programs, companies will have like, you know, employee assistant programs. There's different levels of behavioral health being offered all the way kind of through.
Okay. And so is that the same as mental health then? When you say behavioral health, is that the same?
Yeah, those terms can be yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you know, we haven't touched anything what we were going to talk about, but it's lovely. But we get to have you back again, for sure.
Oh my God.
It was such a joy. It was so fun talking to you and getting to know you, actually, and our listeners to know you too.
Thank you. You guys are so sweet.
Like you said, your energy, your vibe, you can just tell, right? And yeah, and that's what we felt. It was so you feel energized. I'm sure you can go see how happy she is.
I can't take all the credit. Come on.
So for sure.
Oh, thank you. This was so nice. That's I love being able to raise that awareness. You know, like if you're suffering at any level of mental health, there is so much out there. The whole field, you know, has changed so much in the last in my career lifespan. It's been night and day. So nobody really has to suffer.
Yeah.
You just have to speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Because and mental health is something that is so talked about now, and people are recognizing it, and the awareness is increasing. So that is a good sign. You know, it's not a taboo topic, or, you know, like we shun away from it. So and the way you bring it out and you're talking about it, it's just, you know, it's a whole different spin to it too. So yeah, it was great. It was
Thank
really,
you.
really great having you. And we definitely will have you back because
Thank you.
we have so much more to talk about, especially when it comes to mental health, of course. Yeah. So thank you, Mahtab, so
Thank
much
you.
for coming to Chai Time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us this morning on Chai Time. We shall see you same time, same place. Signing off, Chai Time on 99.5 FM.